Welcome back to the Video Strategy Podcast, where we aim to share our lived experiences in the field as video strategists to ultimately help you land more clients and charge what you're worth so you can have more fulfilling video businesses. My name's Jackson Kingsley. I've been in the field for over 13 years now. I've worked with many of the world's biggest brands and broadcasters, and over the last 8 years, I've coached over 800 video agency owners, helping them generate over $20 million in revenue. And I'm here with Will Smith.
Hi, guys. Yeah, so I'm Will, and over the past few decades, I've been a cinematographer for some of the world's biggest brands, including National Geographic. And the last couple of years, I've shifted towards video strategy to help my clients overcome their biggest challenges. And it has been life-changing.
Awesome. So in this episode, we're going to be diving into the second of 8 frameworks, which is the strategist frame. And this has been one of, if not the most important shifts that I made in my business to move away from just being perceived as a videographer to being a strategist who charges for outcomes and results. So I think the best place to start is the definition. So the strategist frame, what it really means is the way that you frame the conversation. And interestingly, one of the things that people don't really realize is that the frame has often been set before you even start the conversation. So let's say you have a referral, you have an inbound lead, and someone has referred you to this person. And the frame that has been set is potentially like, Will's a great videographer, you should speak to him. And that frame is really important. And oftentimes we don't notice just how much of a difference it makes to the ultimate end result and directly impacts how much we can charge. So to give you a little bit of an analogy, there's a marketing agency, a guy called Dave, who I worked with for a long time, about 10 years ago now. And Dave's work made up a significant chunk of my monthly income. It was bringing in about 5 to 10K per month. But every time he referred me to someone, he'd always say, Jackson's this great videographer. If you need a good shoot and edit, he can do it quickly. He can get it done. And so every time he referred me to someone, the frame had already been set, which is really interesting because at the time I didn't realize that was happening. And every time I started a conversation with a new person, I felt like it was impossible to increase what I was charging and shift from being, hey, I'm just this guy who shoots and edits, to actually being someone who really focuses on a more sort of strategic, top level, helps businesses get results kind of guy. For me, working with marketing agencies always proved very difficult because they always were looking for someone based on price, someone who was a vendor, someone who could do the cheapest option and get the sort of the quality that they were looking for. It wasn't until much later that I realized that this is something that you have to do consciously going into every conversation, is say, this is who I am and why I'm here. Now, this is something that you can do before the conversation. Yeah, I recommend doing it when you're sending emails, when you're marketing. Like, your marketing should be doing some of this heavy lifting as well, setting the frame, setting that expectation, so that when you go into the call with someone, it's all that much easier. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it makes sense because it's been fantastic for me recently. But I'm putting my mind in our audiences, people who are listening to this now who might not have tried this. And I know a blocker or a question I had at the beginning was, my referrals are kind of working for me. I'm getting consistent work. It might not be the best work, but hey, it's getting me by. And would shifting this strategy, is there any way this would damage my reputation with previous clients? Or, basically what are the downsides, I guess, of shifting like this?
I totally get what you mean. So it's that feeling that if you start saying you're doing something different, then clients might say, well, we don't want that. And you might lose clients this way. Now, interestingly, when done right, this approach, it doesn't result in any lost clients. It only results in better relationships with people. So just to highlight, the way that this can go wrong is if you just start a conversation with someone you've spoken to before and you say, hey, I'm now charging 3 times as much. And you just go in blunt instrument approach and you just say, right, this isn't what we can, we can't do the same thing for the same price anymore. Because in the client's mind, they're like, well, why not? And this happened to me on a number of occasions. One in particular, there was a finance company that I worked with about 10 years ago or so. First project I did for them was around £500. And then the next project I came in and I said that my rate was £1,500. And they were like, well, actually, to be honest, I didn't hear anything from them. They just completely ghosted me after that. And it wasn't until a few weeks after that I finally managed to get through to them. And he said, well, why on earth would we pay £1,000 more for the exact same thing? The key way to frame it with existing clients is to say, I appreciate the work that we do together. And what I've found over the years is that producing the content is great, but we have potential to do so much more with you. And if you're open to it, I'd love to have a conversation just to sort of better understand your business, your goals, what's going on at the moment. So then we can see if there's something that we can help you with on a deeper level. Would you be open to that? And from there, I'll simply just bridge into asking, what's the biggest challenge in your business right now? And the key thing here is that you want to show to the client that what you're doing now is different to what you did before. Does that make sense? You can't say, right, I'm charging more for the same thing. You have to say, right, what we're doing now is taking a different strategic approach to the work that we're doing. So this has been really important because a lot of people, they worry that, if we suddenly start saying we're something different to our clients, we'll lose them. And yes, that is possible, but not if you do it the right way and you manage that expectation. And you can also clearly say to them that we're still happy and we're willing to continue doing work the way that we used to with you, like no problem at all. But I'd love to just open up this other conversation just to see if there are things that we can help you with on a deeper level so that we can make sure that the work we do with you gets even better results and make sure that it helps move the needle in your business.
Well, and I think this is the key shift is going from being a supplier to being a problem solver. You're not just there to give them videos, you're there to actually help them solve problems. I know a big challenge for me at the beginning was, how do I suddenly make this shift? I'm not suddenly this expert. I've spent decades doing one thing. How can I suddenly do another thing? But what I realized is that you don't even have to know how to do all these other things. You don't have to suddenly step into this new identity. All you need to do is start asking smart questions. Like you said, Jackson, you're great at what you do already. You can absolutely keep doing that. But if you actually want to change, all you need to do is start asking your clients more questions about their actual problems that actually need solving. So to follow on from that, let's look at me a few years ago. I've got great experience, but I'm struggling to find clients. Like how long would this shift take to go from, videographer to video strategist, I guess? Is it a long process?
It's not a long process, it's a gradual one, but it all begins with making that shift to start asking better questions during a meeting. And there's lots of other things that you can do that make the conversation easier, that better position you as an expert. But the first most important thing is to start asking better questions and make sure that those first conversations, the first meeting with every client, is about 10% you talking, you asking questions, and 90% them responding, giving you information. Because a strategist isn't there just to take a brief and to be told what to do. The strategist is there to diagnose. It's a diagnostic conversation at the beginning, and you're there gathering as much information as you possibly can, and only then can you come up with a viable solution. And I'm always referencing the doctor frame because it's the exact same situation that you have when you meet a doctor. They sit you down and they don't just start talking about the weather, and they don't go off on a ramble, and they don't ask you, for a brief. They sit you down and they ask you questions to diagnose what's really going on. And by asking those questions, they're building a lot of trust. And that's exactly what you're doing when you sit there and you spend the first 45 minutes to an hour just asking them questions about their business. So not only does it build trust, but it also diagnoses the real problem so you can come up with a solution that's actually going to make a difference to them. So that's the first step. And if we look at the 80-20 Pareto principle, that's the 20% that's going to start getting the 80% of the results.
Again, I'm imagining myself a few years ago, but when would I start sharing my work? When would I start, creating decks and reels and things like that for these clients? Do I need to do that?
Yeah. So the other important piece of this is that when you're going in that first meeting, it's all about you asking questions. You've got to really avoid that temptation to start sharing your ideas or sharing your portfolio or anything creative. And that's one of the things that feels most counterintuitive when you start going about this approach, because you feel like your value is in your creative ideas and you want to give them as much value as possible because that's the way we've been told is the best way to land clients and build trust. But in fact, if we do that, we self-sabotage. And the best analogy for this is, again, it's with a doctor, because if you go into the doctor's office and they immediately prescribe something, they sit you down and say, hey, yeah, you're going to need surgery on your leg, when you haven't even answered their questions, you haven't dug into the problem yet, there's going to be a huge mismatch and a huge lack of trust there. So the key thing there is that you as the doctor, you must be there asking questions, never prescribing, never talking about the creative and the technical until you fully understand the problem. And as well, that's something that could take an hour. It could take 3 hours. I've actually been in situations before where I've worked with more complicated companies and it's taken 3 meetings just to diagnose the problem before I'm then able to prescribe a solution. And that is absolutely fine. The most important thing isn't how long the meeting takes, it's making sure you're not skipping a step, because when you skip a step, everything else before it falls apart.
Yeah, and I find that the traditional method, or the method that we've all grown up with, of being told build your reel, get referrals, do a good job, all of that stuff, you're skipping all of the steps to the end. Essentially, you're only focusing on the delivery and you're not focusing at all on the problem. Like you're the doctor who's running and amputating all these legs when no one needs their legs amputated, basically.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to get paid very well. And so, again, this all sounds really cool, but what happens if, a client comes to me and says, okay, we've got this idea, how much is it going to cost? And you say, okay, this will cost a few grand. Temptation is just to immediately reply and be like, okay, my day rate is this. I'm good at what I do, so I charge, this is what I'm worth. Why not just do that? That sounds a lot quicker.
So in these situations, I like to do what's called pivot and pull. So you acknowledge their idea, you show that you appreciate what they're saying, and then you pivot into asking your own questions again. So someone comes to me with an idea, and this has happened on many occasions. One particular example was a winery that I worked with. They came to me and they said, we need a video to promote our launch, and we've got a £5,000 budget. Instead, what I did was I acknowledged what they're saying. I said, that's awesome. I love the fact that you've got some ideas and, we can talk about that. But I'd love to make sure that whatever we do create for you actually gets the results that you're looking for. So with that in mind, can I ask you a few questions first to better understand your business and your goals? And then I went into the questions. I started with understanding their challenges, understanding their goals, understanding what the value is of solving the problems. And then by the end of that 1 hour conversation, we ended up closing the deal for £30,000 instead of 5. So it's really, really important that you reframe, like I said earlier, but in those situations where someone comes to you directly with an idea, you simply acknowledge what they're saying. And then you say, okay, before we get into that, can we just have a look at this? Can I first diagnose the problem? Can I first better understand your business challenge and your goals? And that's by far the best way to build trust.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a similar experience yesterday. I went into a meeting. Someone said, okay, I know what I want, and I want it for £500. And in my mind, I was like, that's going to be hard to deliver, and it's actually not going to get them the results they wanted. By the time we were finished talking, we decided that actually a £5,000 or a £12,000 solution would be better for him in the long run, because we're looking at what would a year look like, and what would to actually grow his business, to actually make an impact. Investing significantly more is going to be a much higher likelihood of return on investment. But my question is, I've had the opposite experience too. When someone says, okay, I've got a project, it's going to be £3,000. And I look at the project and in my mind, I'm like, there's no way we can deliver that for £3,000. Let's try the strategist frame. It kind of backfired in a way. They were like, there's no way. They just couldn't see the value. For whatever reason, I couldn't diagnose the problem. and they project didn't go through. So I lost out on £3,000 is one way to look at it. Is there a more positive way to look at that?
Well, the first thing, and you already kind of answered why this one fell apart. You mentioned that you failed to diagnose the problem. And so that was the real piece where, if you'd spent more time diagnosing the problem, really focused on that, then inevitably they would have been able to see the value, or you would have increased the chances that they've been able to see the value. So that's the first piece. The other bit is that not everyone is the right client for you, and that's okay. So someone coming to you who just has a 3K budget and they're just essentially price shopping. They've already got a very clear brief. This is exactly what they want, and they're not willing to budge whatsoever. To turn down a client like that is okay. And the way I calculate whether it's okay or not is just by understanding what my minimum level of engagement is. So let's say I want to be making 500K in a year. I know that the number of clients I want to have on average throughout the year is around 10 or 10 to 12 clients. And so I take that 500, divide it by 10, and I know that each client I work with should be investing around 50K per year to work with me. Now, the decision I need to make is not, is that 3K, does it equal 50K? No. The question is, does this client have the potential to become a 50K client? Is it possible that this first 3K project could be a gateway or a milestone to then doing bigger stuff together? So with that in mind, it changes the way you ask questions and what you ask. So you'll be having a conversation with them, looking at their business as a whole with that in mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really interesting. So I think the folks that turned me down, I think they really just wanted a videographer. And I've learned that's just not how I want to spend my time anymore. In the long run, they had limited budget and they weren't really growing, and but at the same time, there's other businesses that I've started working with at a lower budget because I see the benefit over time. One example, we just finished month 17 of working with a client that we've been able to get them significantly better results month on month, and they just pay us more and more. So I guess it can start small, but if you think you can genuinely help these people grow over time, the more you help them grow, the more they're going to pay you because the more results you can deliver. And that's really the place you want to be at.
I think a really key point here, just to drive home, is that milestones are the key to unlocking the potential larger value with a lot of prospects. And when people come into this process, sometimes they're just thinking, well, that's too small of a project, so it's not worth my time. But the real question is, can this small project turn into a larger project if the client has the potential to do so? So just making sure that when you're looking at here's what they want to achieve right now, fine, acknowledge that, okay, but where do they want to get to in 12 months? Where do they want to get to 24 months and 5 years from now? And when you look at that, you'll be able to see, can this initial project be a stepping stone to what might ultimately be a client that helps me reach my minimum level of engagement over a 12-month period?
Oh yeah, because I mean, especially at the beginning, the first stage is just trust. They haven't worked with you yet. Maybe they're not going to drop 100K immediately to someone they've never met before. But if that first project goes well, they're much more likely to continue to persist. Another thing I found really helpful is being able to scale my production. So even some clients are only £250 a month, but I know that I want to make £150 per hour. So I know if they pay me 500 and I can fulfill that job or get them results they want in 3 hours, then that's worth my time. And then the more results I get them over time, the more I can charge them. But if your goal is to keep getting good clients, better clients, help them, you can scale these options.
Yeah.
So my next question about all this is, where do we start? Like, do we have, is it better to go after new clients or to try and shift old clients who you've been videographer for years for?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the short answer is you're better off taking this approach with new clients, because in many ways it's easier just to go in with a completely fresh frame. But that's not to say that you can't do it with older clients as well. Just you have to be very, very deliberate about the way that you set the frame. Put yourself in their shoes. In fact, do this with all of your clients. Just take a moment to just sit down, really think about, how is that person perceiving me, perceiving my business? And for example, if someone finds you on Fiverr, what's their perception of you going to be? Or Upwork, what's that perception going to be? What are they thinking about? It's going to be very, very different to if you reached out to them with, let's say, a cold email that says you're looking to build a case study to demonstrate your expertise within their niche. Yeah. And that again would be very, very different to, let's say someone has referred you and they said, right, Will's this amazing cinematographer, versus maybe someone referred you and said, Will's this amazing video strategist who got me amazing outcomes and results for my business. They helped me triple my business over a 2-year period. So each of those are very, very different. Just take the time to think about, what is the person you're reaching out to perceiving you to be? Now, the next bit to that is, what do you want it to be? In my case, I want them to see me as a video strategist, someone who doesn't just deliver videos, it doesn't just hand over a deliverable and then it's done. I want to partner with people. I want to really take the time to understand their business. I want to help them over a long period of time. I want to help them grow. I want to build a really strong relationship. And so I'm going to be very conscious about the way that I set the frame going into the conversation, but also in my marketing as well. My website is going to reflect this messaging. The email reminders before they got on a call with me, all of this is going to reflect that same messaging and make sure that I'm in control of the frame.
Like, how does this, say I'm working full time as a freelancer, like how quickly do I want to make this shift? Do I have to change this right away? Do I just have to drop all my clients? I can't really afford to do that.
So firstly, don't drop everything if you've got some things that are working, and it doesn't have to be an immediate one day to the next kind of shift. So look at the Pareto principle, again, 80-20 rule, and just look at, what are the 20% of your current clients that are getting 80% of the results. And what you'll find is that the higher paying clients and the quality clients, the ones that really value the relationship and are good to work with, chances are there's about 20% of them that bring in about 80% of the income and results for your business. So start with that. Cut out all the things that are taking up a huge amount of your time but aren't particularly rewarding, and then fill that time with the things that we're talking about here, which is taking a more strategic approach, being very deliberate about who you reach out to and how you reach out to them.
So it can be a phased approach, essentially, kind of like
Yes.
how we talk with our clients, right? You're at A, how do we get to B? And when do you need to get to B? You can kind of we can kind of do that with ourselves, right? We think, okay, this is my state in life, but I want to be consistent. Like something I hear from a lot of colleagues or friends, or I definitely went through in the past, was just consistency. The dream of consistent work with good clients that actually pay well. And when we look at this kind of approach, this is clearly a step in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of these things that we are applying as a strategist with our clients, we can also use on ourselves. So when it comes to diagnosing a client's problems, the better we get at that, the better we get at diagnosing the challenges and the bottlenecks in our own businesses as well. So it's a hugely valuable skill. And at the end of the day, getting better at business overall, attracting higher quality clients, being able to charge more, getting better results, building better case studies. It's not about improving your technical and creative skills. It's really about improving your business acumen and the way that you're going about the conversations that you're having with clients. And then in turn, the way that you're having conversations with yourself.
Okay, so I get on the phone with these clients. I'm shifting the frame. I'm asking them what their biggest challenges are. Are there any other questions that, can help them get to where I want them to get to?
Yeah, the what's the biggest challenge is always the starting point. That's going to open the right doors, take you in the right direction, and you want to really spend a lot of time digging into what those challenges are. And we'll get into a lot more of that on some of the other episodes. But a question that is incredibly valuable, that helps in every one of these situations, is to ask, If you and I were sat here 12 months from now and we were having another conversation and everything had gone exceptionally well for your business, what would have needed to have happened? And the beautiful thing about this question is it puts the prospect in the place where they're thinking about a scenario where you've helped them and they're painting a picture for what success looks like. And at the end of the day, as a strategist, what we're trying to do is understand where they're at now, where they want to get to, and what the potential bottlenecks are. So this one question, that 12 months from now question, paints a really amazing picture. And I've seen calls that have been falling apart where people haven't really been able to get the information they need, but they ask this one question and then it really helps them get to the root of what the client wants at the end of the day. So yeah, what's the challenge? What's the biggest challenge in your business right now is always my starting point. And then my other favorite question is, sat here 12 months from now, everything's gone exceptionally well. What has happened in your business to make it the best year ever?
This sounds like a shift, right? I've been a videographer for decades, or I've been a skilled craftsperson for decades, years, success, ups and downs, whatever. Is this not a detour from my skill, from my craft set, to go towards this kind of sales strategy frame rather than just sticking to what I've been doing for decades and getting better at that?
I get where you're coming from. And I think a lot of people really worry about becoming a salesperson when what they really want to be is creative. They want to produce amazing work for amazing clients. But the counterintuitive thing here is that in order to get to that place where we have full creative control over our businesses and we pick and choose who we work with, we first need to learn how to go through this process of diagnosing a problem so that ultimately we have control over prescribing video as the solution. And I think, I mean, I totally relate to this because I've had the same issues when I was starting my business. The idea of learning sales or the idea of becoming more business savvy really wasn't something that appealed to me until I saw the results, until I started to see that actually going down this route, I unlock much bigger budgets, I unlock much better results for my clients. And ultimately, the cycle then continues because I'm creating amazing case studies, which is bringing me in better and better work month after month. And I think, Will, that's something that you've experienced over the last year or so. Just by making this shift, the number of clients that you've been bringing on has tripled or more. The amount that you've been charging has gone up significantly. And I'll put the question back to you: like, how's it been for you? Do you feel like you have sort of lost part of what you were doing before, part of your creative process, or what's that been like for you?
No, it's funny. It's been the absolute opposite, to be honest. Do I spend a little bit less time shooting and editing? Yes. But the time I do spend shooting and editing are the projects I'm really passionate about. Um, I have found that the much more valuable use of my time has been to have conversations with clients, develop relationships with clients, actually help them solve their problems. And what's so fun, now I've got a few clients who've been with me for over a year who I've been consistently getting better and better results with. Like, my relationship with those clients is so much more fun because you get excited about, okay, so what do you want to do next? Okay, so what about these next 3 months? What about this quarter? Like, what are your goals? And seeing the results we got last time, could we try putting it a bit more and putting a bit more resources and helping you get further? And so it's just a much deeper relationship, and it's just much more exciting,
Yeah,
which
I
is
love
really,
that.
really
I
good.
love that.
And the slight shift I'll mention too about like video person to salesperson, there's no real shift. You're a wonderful person. You're fantastic at what you do. Why not learn a few extra skills to massively multiply what you're already doing? If we're thinking that, we've spent our lives on a few set of very important skills of being a fantastic creator, what are the parts that we're missing that could massively, scale that thing of being a creator? And in my experience, video strategy has been that. The more you learn, the more you earn. It's pretty simple.
Okay, so we'll leave it there for this week. I think that's a really good place to end for now. If you're listening to this and you've got questions, thoughts, comments, let us know below and we'll make sure that we answer them, and also gives us an idea of what you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Next week, we're going to be covering the case study process, which is a very unique framework that I've developed that has had profound impact on both my business and dozens of others. So I'm really excited to dive into that. It's what has enabled me to be charging 25K plus for projects without any existing portfolio or case studies in that specific niche. So yeah, very excited to dive into that. In the meantime, let us know what questions you've got, and we'll see you next week.